VikesNow, Dustin Baker, the Wednesday edition, May 25th. We're going to have an honest-to-goodness chat about Kellen Mond. It dawned on me in the 2-month-long history of the show. Haven't talked about him. Haven't had a show about his stock on these 2022 Vikings, chiefly because it was mysterious. We'll get into the whole gauntlet on Mond, but I want to do a specific episode on him, which might go a little bit longer than 13-15 minutes, since I've never covered this topic for the group. So let's begin. The Vikings took a flyer on Mond in the third round of the 2021 NFL Draft. He was the fruit of a trade with the New York Jets that gave the Jets Elijah Vera Tucker, who was linked to the Vikings in last year's draft lead-up. And it gave the Vikings Christian Darrisaw, Wyatt Davis, another mystery, and Kellen Mond. So we saw Darrisaw out of the gate, promising future. We think we got the tackles all solidified once and for all for a decade here. And then I'll be damned, Wyatt Davis and Kellen Mond are these notable unicorns about, nobody knows if they're good or not, at least according to the dribblings that came out of the Zimmer regime. So let's start with what we know. Mond was taken for a reason. It was a Rick Spielman pick that evidently, if you're choosing a guy in the third round, we aren't sure about the current quarterback, which would be, Kirk Cousins. And that was coming off the unfortunate steam of a 7-9 season. And Minnesota evidently wasn't going to take one of the quarterbacks, the Justin Fields type, even though there was fodder for that out there. The Bears did it. Didn't look like a smart move right now. And so Mond was the compromise. Spielman said, you know what? Go the hell with you guys. I'm getting Kellen Mond because I see potential in him. And that's where we existed up until now, up until training camp coming up here in 2022. But things got dicey then because Kellen Mond from Texas A&M couldn't even win a QB2 job. And the mystery that I've talked about is whether or not the coaching staff just said this guy sucks. Why did you draft him to this team? Or they didn't like him. It's almost like a sabotage type of thing. They just didn't want to play him just because. And it'd be really, really weird for an NFL coaching staff to do that because their goal is to win games. And if Mond is the best option to do it, get his ass on the field. But nevertheless, there's debate on whether or not it was Zimmer and his pals who simply didn't care for what Mond brought to the table in year one. But regardless, if he was that good in the summer, in the preseason, he should have been able to win a QB2 job. And that's because he came from the third round of the draft. It's an extremely delicate position of the draft for a quarterback because there's not a litany of history that shows, you can hit on a third-round quarterback. However, it happens every now and then, like with Russell Wilson, or even Cousins was found in the fourth round. So he's right on this fulcrum that in the third round, you won't be shocked one bit if he never amounts to anything. He's also, if he turns out to be a starting quarterback or damn near even a Pro Bowler, you'd be like, well, yeah, he was taken out of the third round. He's not some late-round asshole. It makes sense that he's good. So he'll forever, until he does something, whether it's win the QB2 job, eventually play for the Vikings, or after his rookie deal over, go play somewhere else. It's going to be a verdict on this very delicate position of the third round of, because there's not a ginormous history of third-rounder quarterbacks, making it, at least recently. I tweeted that there's only 2 Vikings quarterbacks that have been selected in round 3 in team history, Fran Tarkenton and Kellen Mond. Now, I found that interesting because they just don't go to that grocery store of a third round to find quarterbacks. And some folks thought that I meant that they're bedfellows, Fran Tarkenton and Kellen Mond. They're not. Fran Tarkenton is a Hall of Famer. Kellen Mond can't even win a QB2 job. That's where we're at right now. So, Mond, notably, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about his living in Mike Zimmer's doghouse, seemingly inexplicably. Mond had an opportunity to potentially start the Week 17 game when Kirk Cousins contracted the coronavirus, but nope, they went with Sean Mannion, who is notoriously non-dynamic. A couple shows ago, I said he's like a slow Brad Johnson, and that's not a compliment. It's Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl and all that and was a decent starting quarterback, but that reminds me of just a guy who can't maneuver. And when he hurt his hand cramped up and he had to go drink pickle juice, I don't know if you guys knew that. That's what happened to Mannion in the Packer game. Mond came on the field, almost threw a pick six. Nobody ever wanted to see him again. That was his unfortunate trial by fire in the regular season. And after the game, or the next morning, can't remember which one it was, I think it was after the game, Zimmer said he didn't particularly want to see him again on a regular season field because he saw enough of him in practice to know he ain't it. And that was panned as destroying a quarterback's confidence. You got to build these guys up, yada, yada, yada. 8 days later, Mike Zimmer was fired. So it really doesn't matter what he thought of Kellen Mond. It's just, in retrospect, strange that he would have such a low opinion of a mobile quarterback that's on your team that has to be better than Sean Mannion. Let's see here. What is that? So if we fast forward to, that was 5 months ago with Mond and Zimmer's termination January 10th. The reason we're having the show today is because we have developing or different news, the anti-Zimmer pizzazz about Mond. A little over a week ago, Kevin O'Connell said that Mond is having a good spring, and he commented on his instincts as those were impressive. And we didn't hear anything like that at all last summer, or especially in week 17 after the Packers loss. So you have the commander-in-chief of the Vikings who says, guy looks pretty good. He's having a good spring. If Zimmer was still in charge, probably wouldn't say a damn thing. And that's fine. That's how Zimmer rolled. He didn't like this guy. It happens. Fast forward again to yesterday, a week later, after the head coach and the new offensive coordinator, Wes Phillips, who I forget about because I just assume that O'Connell's going to run the ship on offense like Zimmer ran the ship on defense. But yes, indeed, there's an offensive coordinator. And he said that Mond looked really sharp. And sharp was not an adjective associated with Mond, with Mike Zimmer residing in Eagan, Minnesota as the skipper. So you have two guys who matter, two offensive brains that happen to be in charge of this team that say, he's pretty impressive. These are the things you would expect to hear about a rookie quarterback last year or an otherwise just young quarterback this year in a sophomore season. Positivity, collaboration, hope, promise. And that's what everybody felt in their bones when Mond was drafted, that this guy is everything Cousins isn't. He's young, Cousins is old, he's mobile, Cousins is immobile, and he inspires hope. And Cousins inspires a consistent batch of 30 touchdowns per season and 4,000 yards that, unfortunately for the Vikings, has resulted in 2 successive mediocre seasons. Mond, the upside of Mond offers a lot more than that because you only think of the cool, pristine part of what Mond could be if he develops in the way that you want him to. Anyhow, so now we have this newfound positivity on Mond, where it was old-found negativity on Mond at the beginning of January. That is noteworthy. That is a change of pace to what you thought in February or so. You didn't know what to think of Mond. Like maybe the new coaching staff comes in and says, this guy ain't it, and you never see him again. That ain't happening. Now you pivot to the next spot in the Mond saga, which is this summer. Sean Mannion, the incumbent QB2 on every depth chart in the world. If you go to ESPN, Sporting News, CBS Sports, Our Lads, it says QB2 Sean Mannion. You have, if you're a Mond fan or if you're just a Vikings fan or both or neither, you have an almighty litmus test this summer with Kellen Mond. If he cannot win the QB2 job with a new pair of eyes, multiple sets of eyes, over Sean Mannion, then that means Zimmer was correct. The guy isn't ready for a backup quarterback job. If Mond was a 7th rounder, it would be excusable. It would be forgivable. Mond is a 3rd rounder. The guy should win a QB2 job with his eyes closed. So, when you're monitoring the Vikings this summer, you're watching me or reading the stuff in the digital stratosphere, You need to see if Mond checks in as QB2 when the 53-man roster hits or the first official depth chart, because that is mandatory if you want Mond's stock to be high. If it comes in QB3, the guy doesn't even make the team, then sayonara. It's not worth it. Zimmer was right. That's what the show will be called when we air it on like September 9th or something like that. I think Mond will win the QB2 job. I don't think that O'Connell and Phillips are lying to you right now. I think they're saying, yeah, this guy can move and we'll polish him. That's what they're there for. That's what the Zimmer coaching staff evidently didn't have the wherewithal, interest, motivation to do. They like Sean Mannion, Paul Bunyan, great. Let's just use him. And all of this is of the utmost importance, the QB2, because he's the proverbial one snap away. Let's say the Vikings come out of the gate and all of this hype on the new coaching staff, offense first, just works fabulously. And the Vikings are 6-1 or some shit like that into October. Well, Kirk Cousins is due to get hurt. The man has never missed a game due to a non-viral injury. And if that happens, you want to see Kellen Mond as the QB2. I swear to God you want to see that. Otherwise, you're going to get a redux of Week 17 against the Packers, where Sean Mannion, you know what he is. He is a miniature version of a game manager that ain't going to cut it. Now, of course, anytime a QB1 goes down, a team's season is basically kaput. The outlier was the Philadelphia Eagles in 2017, so we all point to that one and be like, well, look what happened when Carson Wentz went down. They went and won a Super Bowl. Yeah, that happened once. Arguably, the other time with Jeff Hostetler in the early 90s with the Giants. But if the Vikings are ripping and roaring and things are fun and sexy, if something happens to Cousins, you don't want to pivot to Mannion. If you do, you're weird. You want to pivot to Mond, because at least there's promise, there's hope that maybe this guy is good and he's only 23 and this is more storybook than Mannion coming in and, going 2-7 thereafter, because that would happen. You need a good quarterback in this league. I think the days of game management are over. And I'm not saying that Mond's going to be fantastic, but he's certainly more mobile and exciting in this pass-happy NFL than Mannion would ever be. So I want to see Mond. I know you want to see Mond if something happens to Kirk. And if Mond can't win the QB2 job and we are relegated to a Mannion possibility of QB2 in the event Cousins is hurt, ay caramba. No good. I don't want to be a part of it. A couple more things winding down the show. The progression of Mond is of the utmost importance for a very, very simple reason. Right now, we foresee the Vikings as being better than 8-9 last year because there's new people in charge. They're going to unlock the offense. The damn thing's going to be uncorked. But right now, that's just all sunshine and rainbows. The team could very well go 8-9 again. And then, you're staring at each other saying, now what? This quarterback, Mr. Cousins, has a no trade clause. We got to find some place he wants to go, or we got to go through one more year. That's how you'd be feeling if the Vikings don't reach the postseason again. The progression of Mond right now, this summer, into the regular season is important because it tells you if he is a candidate for life after Cousins. If the Vikings don't win a Super Bowl, or God forbid they miss the playoffs again, you're going to very loudly hear about plans for the future at quarterback. You'll know based on what Mond does behind the scenes in Egan and, on the bench as a QB2, whether or not his development is becoming of a candidate to take over the Vikings. Right now, he probably won't do that. Let's be honest here. He's probably not the future quarterback of the Vikings, but at least he is there as somebody to be adjudicated to figure out as such. So his progression, whether it's good or bad, is ultra important because you need to know what you have if this experiment with Cousins and O'Connell doesn't work out. And up until 2 weeks ago, when it was all doom and gloom on Mond, it was like, well, nobody was even considering him. When the draft lead up was happening, you talk about, oh yeah, maybe they'll draft Malik Willis, or maybe they'll go take a stab at somebody like or Powell from North Carolina. And they didn't do that because they already have their stab, and that's Kellen Mond. And right now, he's doing the right things, and the coaches are saying things congruent with what you'd want to hear about a young quarterback. So on the whole, the big takeaway from this and why I called it Rejuvenated Pizazz is that you learned from the two guys in charge of the Vikings offense that Mond is not horrible. You did not know that 2 months ago. You flat out didn't. Mike Zimmer gave the implication through his terse words and the lack of promoting this man Mond to QB2 that he very well could be horrible. Right now, the chirps that are coming out of spring Vikings coverage are that, well, maybe Zimmer got this one wrong. Maybe this guy isn't horrible. That's the big takeaway. And then lastly, what we got to have happen, you remember Ben Lieber was on the show about a month and a half ago. He gave a rather scathing prognosis of Mond, calling him robotic. That's one knock on Cousins, is the Cousins plays like a robot. He said, wait till you get a look at Mond. So Ben Lieber, who we like, has to be wrong. And then Paul Charchian, who's one of my friends, when I had him on my Vikings show about 6-7 months ago now, he gave the same ugh. When we were talking about Mond, I asked him point blank, what do you think? And he's like, give me Davis Mills over Mond. So, just for context, there are some smart football folks that don't think Mond is very good. So, Ben Lieber would have to be wrong. Paul Charchian will have to be wrong. And indeed, Kevin O'Connell and Wes Phillips and Kellen Mond will have to be right in order for Mond to succeed as a QB2 and perhaps eventual QB1. That is the Mond chat. I hope you found it insightful. You can tell me if it was shitty in the comments or give me some perspective as to why I'm wrong, or you can reaffirm that I'm correct. But that's all I got, and Skol, baby.